John Holschen is no ordinary firearms instructor. He is a U.S. Special Operations veteran turned civilian defender.
Well, certainly in training in the Special Forces course, you've got people that are first self-selected and then have been selected through a rigid process. So they're already self-starters, self-motivated. Sometimes working with private citizens, you get people coming to class. Sometimes it's not their own motivation to start with, it's someone else's motivation, right? Some loved one told them, you should really do this, or, is dragging them along into it. And then as well, you get people with various history and various baggage, and how that impacts their self-confidence, how that impacts their ability to learn is quite variable.
A two-time National Tactical Invitational champion and a certified master tactician. He spent decades translating elite level training into something everyday people can use to protect themselves and their loved ones.
A core attribute, a core right that we all have, a race, color, creed, lifestyle choices, no matter who you are, where you come from, you need to be secure in yourself first, and then the ability to secure those you care about around you. And helping people have that confidence, the competence that breeds that confidence, so they can go be them and live their best life.
And that's what today is about. If you're serious about becoming a true defender of life, not just someone who owns a gun, but someone who can think, act, and prevail under pressure, then this conversation is for you. Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed, whether you're watching on Rumble or YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you find this show. If you don't want to miss another episode, head to defenders-live.com and become a free subscriber. That way, every new episode gets delivered straight to your inbox. And if you're looking for top-tier firearms and self-defense training, go to defenders-usa.com and check the calendar to see what's coming to your area this year. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I am your host, Lora Thorson. John Holschen is a former U.S. Special Forces operator, weapons sergeant, medical sergeant, and intelligence sergeant who transitioned into teaching civilians how to defend themselves with precision, judgment, and tactical awareness. Certified by the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission, the U.S. Department of State, and the NRA, he's earned Master Instructor and Master Tactician accolades from the American Tactical Shooters Association. A multiple-time top 5 and 2-time winner at the National Tactical Invitational, Holshen's credentials speak volumes. He innovated the applied defensive handgun skills and NeuroDrills, blending neuro-training devices with real-life shooting scenarios to build thinking shooters who see and act under stress. Based in Washington State, he runs West Coast Armory North, teaches nationwide, bringing operator-level skills to everyday defenders, and I'm so excited that John Holschen has finally decided to come on Defenders Live. Welcome to the show, Mr. John Holschen.
Thank you very much, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad we finally worked the calendars and schedules out and made it happen.
Yeah, it took some time, but it was worth it. It was definitely worth it. So one thing I learned about you before the show, and I'm just going to go there because I got really excited about it. And anything I get really excited about, generally the audience is excited listening to me get excited about. And that is, you told me that you used to be, and you said this was like back in the day, but doesn't matter. Humans intelligence collector?
Yeah,
what is that?
The military's fun, but you can reinvent yourself every few years. And so I spent the first almost half of my career as a human intelligence collector, and date myself, that was really Cold War era. And first I had to go to school to learn Russian for full-time for a year at the Defense Language Institute.
Wow.
And obviously a bunch of other training along the way. And that's really a skill set and a set of attributes that just it's kind of recurred throughout my career. I keep coming kind of back to that. I like people. I like talking to people. And basically, if part of my job at times has been go places and talk to people and look at things and come back and write reports about it.
You've done so much in your career, like just to think about all of the places you've seen and the different types of people perhaps that you've come across is just, it's really mind-blowing for me to think about that. And I remember the first time I met you, like you were one of those people that is not easily forgettable. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I took your 4-hour block, I think it was last year at a Girl in a Gun national conference where you were doing this neuro training. And it was my very first exposure to any kind of training that wasn't auditory stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed it so much. It was a tiny bit intimidating at first, but once I started to catch on to it, it became really, really fun. But one of the things that I didn't expect, if I'm being honest, from you, knowing as much as I did, which wasn't very much about your background, like you are so kind and you have such a heart to teach and to serve others. And that came across really well in the way that you spoke to us, the way you handled us on the line, and how you debriefed us about what we did wrong and how we could improve and stuff. And just the way that you handle people in that environment anyway. I just want to say thank you for that, because that's a huge part of being an incredible teacher, and I don't see that in every place that I go, but when I do see it, I acknowledge it and I don't forget it, and it leaves an impression. And you certainly left an impression on me. And I guess I just thought, since you were like this tactical military dude or something, that you would be like drill sergeant mode, and which I'm sure you have that in you too. But for this particular application, I just found it to be a very good mix of both heart and skill, and you were very precise and very black and white about things, and it made it so that we were free to learn easier than other classes I've been in. So
thank you very much. That's I love to teach. It is a passion. It seems like I've been teaching something forever. I don't really know where the passion came from first, but going back to a teenager as a lifeguard teaching swimming to other kids that weren't all that much younger than me sometimes, and then teaching martial arts. And to me, I guess I was raised in the idea that if you have knowledge and skills, the most responsible thing you can do and caring thing you can do is to pass them on. And so I love to teach. That's the bottom line.
And you have skills in so many areas. I'm curious why this particular type of training, especially in the firearms world, did you really hone in on when you have, all the medical sergeant, you said, an intelligence sergeant and all this other stuff? Why this and why now?
Yeah. Well, I believe a core attribute, a core right that we all have, race, color, creed, lifestyle choices, no matter who you are, where you come from, you need to be secure in yourself first, and then the ability to secure those you care about around you, and helping people have that confidence, the competence that breeds that confidence, so they can go be them and live their best life. And to me, that is, it may sound, melodramatic, but to me, that's the highest calling. I mean, it really is.
Wow, we have a lot in common, John Holschen.
Awesome.
Yeah, I believe that very same thing. That's really interesting that you were a lifeguard and a martial arts instructor. Now you're a firearms instructor. Did you do any teaching when you were in the military as well?
Yes. Yeah. Start with, as an NCO, one of your primary jobs is the training of the soldiers that are under you, whether you're at a fire team leader where you only have 3 or 4 people you're responsible for, and as it goes up as your responsibility and your rank goes up, that increases. But then I also spent the last 3 or so years of my active duty time teaching formally in the Special Forces course. So that was I was the NCOIC of one of the sections of the Special Forces medic course.
And so I'm wondering then, transitioning from teaching military versus teaching civilians, are there any, I know that there are some probably common sense distinctions you need to make, but is there anything that keeps coming up in civilians, pattern wise, mindset wise, or behavior wise, that you continually try to help them overcome?
Mm-hmm. I think, well, certainly in training in the Special Forces course, you've got people that are first self-selected and then have been selected through a rigid process. So they're already self-starters, self-motivated. Sometimes working with private citizens, you get people coming to class. Sometimes it's not their own motivation to start with; it's someone else's motivation, right? Some loved one told them, "You should really do this," or is dragging them along into it. And then as well, you get people with various history and various baggage, and how that impacts their self-confidence, how that impacts their ability to learn is quite variable. So as an instructor, you got to be really aware of that and tailor as you go. Where on the military side, I just guys and girls even, there's some generalities there. And of course there are generalities. I raised 3 daughters as well as 2 sons. And my girls are as type A motivated as my sons are, it seems like, but not everybody is of whatever gender. So where with guys in the Special Forces course, you can always set up a competition, get the guy against that guy, and you're going to get the best, out of them. Yeah. And some people don't respond to that nearly as dynamically. So there's different techniques, obviously, but the real key to teaching anything is that it's a two-way street, right? That ability to look at the student and understand, have an insight into what they are understanding, what they're not understanding. And then when we're talking about teaching skills, we're really talking now about coaching. So figuring out what is it that they would most benefit from hearing right now. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's anyone that teaches any sort of physical skills, whether it's, so I've coached volleyball, and I've coached, martial arts and other things as well. And you can look at somebody's performance and see several physical things that could be corrected that will lead to greater performance. But the art of it is understanding what is it the student will most benefit from hearing right now.
Yeah. And I think that's part of meeting them where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's really important. Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to have some great role models in that. So it's, and one, Vicki Farnham right here in the, in the shooting community, bringing it back to the shooting thing. John and Vicki Farnham, I've been training with them for years and years. And it goes back to, and John is an incredible instructor, not taking anything away from John, but there was a time that Vicki was just the person that supported John. She hadn't written her first book yet. She wasn't really known as an instructor herself, but watching her coach, I learned so much observing what corrections she made when, as well as how she made them. Yeah. So great role models.
So I bet there's a lot too. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I mean, how could you not take all of this amazing training you had in the military and not take some gold nuggets from that you're able to apply just in not just human everyday interactions, but as a coach and as an instructor? I can only imagine. I bet it's really nice to, in some ways, be teaching people how to learn life-saving skills, and they're not trying to kill you back. Right?
Well, before Global War on Terror, the first half of my military career, the real role of Special Forces is to be an instructor, a force multiplier. So we're out there working with host country militaries for the most part and helping them develop their skills. So teaching and then leading those people, eventually, potentially leading them in combat is a big piece of it as well.
Did you know this early on, that this was your gift?
I think so. I think fairly early on. Yeah.
Really?
I really do.
And so
I've always felt like anything I know I can teach. And conversely, if I can't teach it, I don't really know. I don't really know it.
You have to know it in order to teach it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's so many people that go through life, John, that are just always wondering what is the gift that I can bring into the world to help people. And so for those people, and this is getting down a sidetrack here, but I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. For those people, what would you say to them? Like, I think for me, the fulfillment of doing it brings me such joy in seeing those people grow, that it just is like a no-brainer for me that this is a gift. Is that your experience as well?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, it just lights me up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, there's nothing better than seeing the progress that someone makes. Well, and when that is in a topic, an area that also leads to their personal security and serenity and confidence and ability that often expands into so many other aspects of life. If you lack that self-confidence in terms of self-defense, and that's such an oversimplistic, label, but basically to be comfortable and confident in yourself where you are, it's difficult then to drive forward and be confident enough to explore other things. So to me, that's why it's a core, it's a starting place. It's part of that. You've got to have a certain degree, I believe, of self-confidence to allow you to, take the steps, get out there on that log that, crosses the creek and see if you can make it across, or, whatever it is. So.
And I think so many people get it wrong when they're trying to build self-confidence and think that it's something like, I guess I'll speak for myself. I used to think that building self-confidence meant that like there was something outside of me I needed to get and attain in order to build it. And what I've learned is that actually for me, it is developed from the inside out.
Absolutely.
from me doing hard things. And it doesn't mean like doing hard things like becoming a Green Beret hard things. It just means whatever that is in my life that I can do the hard thing I don't want to do or that I'm afraid of doing. And then once I've conquered that thing, I'm like, oh, actually, that's literally the process, isn't it? Just step by step, brick by brick.
Success breeds success.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fear and the unwillingness to step out in any kind of uncomfortable situation is what causes, I think, people to just turn inward and never try.
Sure. We get into so much sociology now. I mean, that used to be something that was, to me, it was inherent, as a fairly young kid, just the way we could play, the way we could, disappear after lunch and not come back until dinner time. And you're out there, kind of testing your limits and finding things that are a little bit challenging and overcoming them. And then that gives you greater confidence to try more the next day. Of course, you have to temper that along the way. There can be some monumental failures, but at the same time, that's that growth process that it seems like maybe the people who are, late teens, early 20s today, do they have that same opportunity? I don't know. I don't know through what mechanisms that works. And
I just wonder if we've just gotten so comfortable as a society in general that I don't see a whole lot of value given to getting uncomfortable and growing in that way. I think people look up to others who are that way, but I don't think they realize how they got there. And if they do realize it, most aren't willing to also go there. And to me, it's like this wild, crazy, wonderful adventure. Like I always am like, yeah, let's go slay the dragons. And I know that is like, that can be on so many different levels. And that can be a process that is super scary, but I still think it's worth it. I still think it's worth it to pursue it. I really do. Like an example of that is like a few months ago, my sister came to visit me in Montana, and she's been a marathon runner her whole life. And I've always looked up to her and never could figure out how people could run that long of a distance.
Forever.
Why would they even want to? And I never could understand it and all this stuff. And I've been working out and stuff, but not like a whole lot of running, but one morning or the night before, she'd invited me the next morning to go on a run with her. She was training for a half marathon. She said she was going to run, I think it was 10 or 12 miles that next morning. She's like, you can just go along with me and just run however long you want and turn around and go home whenever you want to go home, no big deal. And I ended up running the whole 10 miles, John. I'd never run 10 miles my entire life. I'm in my mid 40s right now.
Yeah.
And it turned into this conquest. It turned into this, okay, I got into the 3 miles and I was on a runner's high. I was feeling like on top of the world. It was great. I got into mile 5 and things were starting to like kick in on the, this is getting real now.
Right. Yeah.
But then I had a choice
about how far home is it?
Yeah, exactly. And I got into 5 miles and I'm like, okay, I have a choice to make. Do I keep going or what do I do? And I just decided like, why don't I just see? I'm probably not going to die. Right. And if I need to walk, I can walk. You know what I mean? And so I just kept going and I went through all the highs and lows of pain and discomfort and lows and endorphins. It was just like this crazy wild journey. And when I got to the end of it, like my body, it definitely didn't know what happened to it at the end of that. I had cramping going on and all kinds of, but it was like, if I would have never even tried, I would have never known what that experience would be like. I got to share it with my sister, which was so memorable to me, someone I'd looked up to my whole life. And we'll never forget that as long as we live,
Absolutely.
And so it's like, why not? Why not try? And so that is an uncomfortable thing. I didn't know that I could, first of all, I had no idea I could even do that physically. I didn't even know that I was capable of doing that,
So much to be learned there between, discomfort, pain and injury and what's the relationship between those three. And I can remember, there's a reason, for example, special forces training, long distance running and ruck marches. And more than once I've been, we would take turns as instructors in the schoolhouse, doing the cleanup crew, basically, running drag to pick up the stragglers. And I was famous for, I'd come up on some poor kid who's standing there with his, hands on his knees and his head hanging down. And I just can't go on. I'm like, or what? He goes, I can't. I'm like, or what? It's like, take another, are you going to die? Right. One kid told me, well, I might. And I said, well, let's try it. And I gave him a little push. So he had to stumble a step. I'm like, look, you're still alive. Let's try it again. After a couple, it's like, hey, imagine that. You're still alive.
Yeah. And you know what I thought of
steps
too?
Again, and let's see what happens.
I just kept my eyes on the horizon and I just kept finding a new marker.
Yeah.
And the markers got closer and closer to me the longer I went, because I didn't feel like I could keep my brain that far ahead. I just had to look for the next tree or the next fence post or whatever. Once I got to that, I'm like, okay, I made it there. Now what's the next marker? And that was the psychological game I played that got me through it.
Absolutely. Very cool. Now to take that to the next level up, long distance swimming, because now, particularly if you do it offshore, like I used to do, you can't quit. Particularly sometimes there's an offshore current. So even if you like slow your pace down to a, just to a resting pace, and you realize I'm losing ground, the current's sweeping me out to sea. I have to keep, it's equivalent, keep running. You've got to keep swimming at least a certain pace or you're losing ground. And that takes it to a whole new mental place.
No kidding.
Running, you can always just stop. You can always just say, all right, I'm done. I'm just going to stop and walk. Not so much swimming.
How do you keep yourself from panicking? Did you ever have the tendency to want to panic at that?
No, not in the water.
What makes John Holschen want to panic? Is there anything on the planet?
What's funny is you do enough high adrenaline events and it really ruins you for things like roller coasters and rides at the fair and so on, because you just subconsciously like switch into, the management mode of, okay, control my breathing, look at and it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's no fun.
So your tolerance level is really high at this point, isn't it?
I expect anybody that does, a lot of jumping out of airplanes, high level rappelling, that kind of stuff. You have to, because to me, at least my experience, the physiological responses are still there. Your brain does not like looking down from those kind of heights and doing things. So you've got to develop. For me, I develop an internal dialogue, and internal dialogues are funny. I tell people sometimes that I sometimes have like two voices, two little imps, on the one imp is like, so for me, rappelling off a cliff is one of the scariest things. And all the times I've done it, I taught it and, responsible for putting other people over and all that. But still, you start to back over a cliff. And on this side, there's a little voice that goes, hey, what are you doing? Stop that. Hey, stop that. And the voice on the other side goes, hey, we know what we're doing. We're professionals, right? I've checked it. It's been checked by 2 people, blah, blah. It's all good. Here we go. The other side's like, stop. You can't walk backwards off a cliff, you idiot. And there's these 2 voices going on in there. So far, the one on the right is always prevailed. And people watching tell me it's not obvious. Thank goodness. But I have this big internal dialogue sometime going on where one side of me is screaming, what the blank are you doing?
Yeah.
And the other's like, yeah, I got this. Just be quiet. Let's go along with the ride.
So it's all the same thing. It's just on different levels, because like my little 10-mile run is like nothing, based on what you've done.
I've never been much of a runner either. I had to do it enough that I got decent at it, but I guess at some point I finally got to where I enjoyed it. I got to where I got good enough at it that just being good at it had its own enjoyment. But running was always a bane for me. It was always a struggle.
Yeah, there's always something. Like right now, my new thing is push-ups. I freaking hate them, but I just keep training, and I just keep getting better at them. I don't feel like I've conquered them yet, but I'm getting there.
There you go.
Yeah, train your weaknesses, right? Yeah. So, well, thank you for that. Side road. I enjoy this.
Makes it fun.
It does, yeah. Well, let's get back on track then.
All right, back on track.
We talked
about training with reality.
Yes, aligning training with reality. What does that mean, John? And how can we align our training with reality?
A great segue, because one of the things that being taught to teach formally instructed me in is that process of curriculum development. And so basically, just a brief overview. To me, it's kind of common sense, but it's amazing how few of us do this when it comes to our shooting training in particular. But basically, you need to do a needs analysis, right? You start with the mission, the objective, and you say, okay, what's my terminal objective? What are my enabling objectives? What skills, attributes, knowledge, abilities do I need to be successful at this? Then we look at those and say, okay, how do I acquire those? Well, first, if I know nothing about it, I have to get exposed to those concepts and materials and skills. So I need to be taught. Then the normal process is you then have to practice those to actually develop proficiency in them. And eventually, of course, you want to be tested in them, and you want to put them into context and test them in context as well. But if we think about it, most of us are, we go somewhere where somebody teaches a class And they may or may not have done this process, and or their mission statement may or may not coincide with mine. And often I feel like the student really does not take time for the introspection to figure out, what does this mean to me? What knowledge, skill, attribute, or ability is it building? And how am I going to get from here, where I've just been exposed to it, to the ability to be able to perform it on demand? And then, that brings, when we're talking about, well, for example, I helped oversee the rewriting of the curriculum at the Special Forces Medic course, one portion of it, when we introduced what are now modern tactical combat casualty care guidelines. Prior to that, much of our training was what we call on command. Show me how to put on a tourniquet. Demonstrate you know how to apply a pressure dressing. Demonstrate this, that, skill set. But what we found is there were people who could ace that, could just, do each of those subtasks perfectly. But now there's a patient that you need to figure out which of those tasks to apply, and apply them in the appropriate time frame, dealing with the other things that are going on in the environment. Not everybody that was good at the individual task was good at that, bringing it into context. So then that led us to, well, how do we teach them that? How do we bring it into context? And one of the attributes when it comes to shooting, one of the problems is that if you think about defensive shooting, all of the relevant information, all of the critically relevant information is going to be visual. Even in a case of, let's say, a law enforcement officer responding to a domestic violence situation where somebody told him ahead of time what he's going to, is my point. Even if you somehow know there's a man with a knife stabbing people, and you arrive and you hear in the next room, it sounds like that's what's going on. Until you put eyes on, or even before you put eyes on, you're in the next room and you hear somebody say, "I'm going to kill you." Well, until you put eyes on, you don't know who it is. You don't know where they are. You don't know if they actually have the ability to kill somebody, or they're just expressing the desire to do so. There's all this information we have to take in before we can apply lethal force. Once we begin applying lethal force, in the real world, it's seldom static. If there's multiple people there, they're all moving. The victim's moving, the attacker is moving, we're moving. There may be other people in the environment. They're all moving. What are they moving through? They're moving through complex environments with furniture, with structural aspects of the building, and all this. We have to gather that information, apply that information, while getting a gun up there in front of us. And if we were trained classically with hard front sight focus, we then shift our focus to the front sight, and we're still supposed to keep track of all the stuff that's going on visually and make good decisions about, when do we start, when do we stop, do we need to add somebody else to the threat matrix, or is somebody we thought a threat no longer a threat, or they're not a threat at all, that isn't the thing we thought they had in their hand. The point is, the only place that most people get to train that is in very limited force-on-force training. And if you haven't already developed the skills, that's like taking somebody and throwing them into, a football game or whatever, and they've done no training. They have what they have, and they may or may not be very good at it. So again, backing into that and saying, okay, what are those? What's the knowledge, skills, attributes, abilities we need? And so for me, that's what I mean when I say aligning training with reality. We have these independent skills that if we examine them, we can see where they don't align with reality. But in many cases, most people fail to examine them, number one. Number two, they don't know how, or can't figure out how to make that more applicable.
If you've been listening to Defenders Live and something in you knows it's time to go deeper, not just in your training, but in your life, become a paid subscriber of Defenders Live. Each month we meet for a live group call, having real conversations about physical growth, emotional discipline, and spiritual strength. You'll be part of a growing community of people just like you, committed to becoming true defenders of life and of their families. This isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, doing the work, and not doing it alone. So go to defenders-live.com and become a paid subscriber, and take your next step toward becoming the kind of defender this world desperately needs. When you were talking about the situation, you were talking about the law enforcement officer coming up to a call or whatever. I don't really know that even that, but you were discussing how the situation is dynamic, that people are moving around, you're moving, there's constant movement going on. So, that's could be visual chaos or distraction or not sure who's who here. But then there's also possibly auditory chaos going on as well that has to be, knowing what to pay attention to and when is important. So that's a whole dynamic that I would say a vast majority, I would imagine, of shooters have not ever come across. Is there anything that you particularly could speak on that people that go to gun training classes commonly train on, or train on maybe too much, that isn't really helping us align with reality? In fact, it might be hurting us to some degree.
Well, I think there's two aspects of that. One is to recognize good news, bad news, training works. Mm-hmm. And what do I mean by that? If you, I use a lot of driving analogies because I find they're actually very appropriate for the type of things that we're doing. We require some of the same mental skill sets if you're driving at any kind of uncontrolled environment, for example, at a high rate of speed. It's been too long since I learned to drive to remember the exact process of learning myself, but I remember teaching my kids. And when you put a brand new driver in the driver's seat, the amount of mental energy, effort it takes simply to get the car to go where they want and stop where they want is immense. Mm-hmm. You're coming up to an intersection with a crosswalk, and you say, as the instructor, I'd like you to stop with your bumper 6 or 8 feet from the crosswalk. And you can see the concentration they put into the thought process, and they stop a whole car length short, or they stop 3 feet over the line, right? Mm-hmm. Why? Because they don't know the inputs yet that they have to put into the vehicle to get it to do what they want. And then, oh my gosh, if they've been maybe driving for a month, training, not on their own yet, and you switch cars on them, it's like starting all over again. Oh, this is all completely different. Now, as a driver for a period of time, nobody thinks about those things. You literally do not have to think about how to get the car to stop where you want it to stop, or to go where, around the curve. How much steering input do you put in? How did that happen? Well, it happened through repetition. We move that skill into unconscious competence through repetition. And to start with, we were only good at it on a single vehicle until we gained more repetition and more experience. And now we can extrapolate it, and generally get in a rental car and, these brakes are a little more or less sensitive than my car. The steering's a little tighter or looser. By the time you leave the airport, you got it figured out. So the point is that what we do habitually will become habituated to the point we don't even recognize we're doing it. So we need to be very, very careful what we do, and we need to analyze it for what's appropriate in this circumstance, but not appropriate in another circumstance. One of my favorites is a ready position. Simple, you have the gun in your hand. Mm-hmm. And there were guys I worked with overseas, and did real work. We went into places where there were bad people, and we knew there were bad people there. Sometimes the bad people knew we were coming. We needed to obviously be skilled at what we were doing. And then I taught with some of those same people. I taught other people doing the same work. And I had an incident several years later with one of these guys. I got together with him, brought him in to help teach a class at a nuclear power plant on the eastern United States. And I had him demo going around a corner with a long gun, but it doesn't really matter. And he goes around the corner, and the gun's up in his face as he goes around the corner. And I'm like, he would never have done that in a real world. Why? So you've got to be able to see what you're about to walk on. Shoot houses are always clean, so we don't trip and fall and have danger. Dangerous things happen. The range is always clean. The real world, there's Tonka toy trucks or Fatima's baby goat on the floor around the corner, and you're going to step on it and you're going to fall on your ass. You got to have the gun out of your face. So I talked to him and said, dude, and now I had to step in and figure out, okay, how do I erase that from the students' minds and give them a better image of what we need? And then I'm talking to him afterwards and pointed out what he did. And he was like, oh man, yeah. He goes, I've just been doing so much range stuff. And, as you come around, the height that the targets have to be at for where the berm is. And frankly, the range stuff he was doing was in preparation for competition, but it isn't about competition. It's about, he was doing a bunch of 3-gun stuff, but it's about what you do repeatedly becomes habituated and unconscious. So we just really need to examine that. Ready positions are a big one for me. I like to practice. Another one of my kind of theorems or principles of practice is practice the motion in its most complete form. In other words, if I'm going to come from let's say a compressed ready is what most people would call the ready position I use with a handgun, because it's neutral and I can move around structure, I need to be able to go from there. Now, if I practice only the last 10% of that, in other words, if the rule system of this competition allows me to start with my gun oriented at the base of the target and only have to raise it X number of degrees depending upon the distance, I want to be able to optimize that for the competition. Absolutely. But I need to be aware that I do it consciously and not come around with that high gun unconsciously when it can bite me. And if I practice the whole motion, I can probably do the last 10 or 15% fairly competently. But if I only practice the last 10 or 15% of a whole movement, I'm not necessarily good at the other 85% of the movement. So I want to really back into things like that and really work from as neutral a position as I can. A drill, in reality, we never know how many rounds we're going to need to fire until we start shooting them. So I need to find ways to practice that. I need to find ways to gain visual feedback as I'm engaging and change my drill based on that versus only drills where I know I'm going to draw and fire 6 shots, or I'm going to do whatever the drill is. It doesn't matter what it is. Now, it doesn't mean there isn't a place for all those other drills and all those other skills, because the more competence you have, the greater it frees up your problem solving ability for real world. So, man, shoot competitions, do the drills, do it all, but recognize where you're compromising to be successful in that sport, where in a different activity or even in just a different sport, different rule system. And you need to understand the differences between the rule systems and make sure that you practice it as completely as you can. Yeah.
That was one of the things that I noticed in your class, which it wasn't a full day class. It was just a 4-hour block. But man, I got so much out of just those 4 hours that I took home with me. A couple of things that you did that I really appreciated was you had us practicing verbal commands. And for some reason, it feels like to me, especially with women, that is a really hard thing for them to do. Do you have any comments about that as to what that's about? Or is it just we just aren't practicing it? And I don't know what it is about speaking up as a woman with authority. It just feels unnatural to some women, I think.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. One, you're absolutely correct that, and it may be more prevalent in women. Honestly, it probably is more prevalent in women, but it certainly is not. Just some people's life experience. They've not been in a position that either allowed that or required that. And so they have not grown in that direction. They had no need to, or it was inhibited. So learning to express yourself definitively and authoritatively is definitely part of it, and working those scripts ahead of time so that they can then become natural and be yours. That's a piece of it. And even once you have that, though, there are individuals who, for example, seen some videos recently and was involved peripherally looking at providing some consulting in a case where a police officer had to shoot someone, and while they were shooting them, they were announcing repetitively before and during, "Drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun." Well, this was leading toward a civil suit against the agency. The offender did not have a gun; he had a knife. And one of the things that the other side was bringing out is obviously your officer was not reacting to what was going on in front of them. They didn't even know whether this person had a gun or a knife. They kept telling him to drop the gun. Obviously, their judgment about the situation is questionable here, because they must have been reacting to something going on inside their head. And anyway, the plaintiff, they tried to spin it into this big, wrongful use of force, basically. And it was just an articulation that had become habituated through training, and which is what we want and need sometimes. We need some tape loops that come out there, but we need to really think about what we want those tape loops to be as well. So yes, a lack of kind of the wherewithal to do it as an individual, then a lack of experience doing it, and just the failure of integration. So the drills that we did were things like, for those that haven't experienced it, things like if I put a green laser on the target, it indicates it's a deadly threat. You should, of course, engage it as soon as possible and as long as it's a deadly threat. In other words, as long as the green laser is present. If I put a red laser on the target, it indicates someone who needs verbal interaction. You should start talking to them. If I put both on at the same time, it indicates you're somewhere in between. It might be appropriate to talk to them with a gun in your hand. And just giving people the opportunity to practice moving up and down through those responses. And it's not, sometimes people go, well, gosh, that's unrealistic. Wouldn't it be better to use a simulator or to use this or that? Absolutely. Except that what all the sports training has figured out now, they're using similar things in golf and tennis and hockey. And somebody just came back from one of the driving schools. They're talking about integrating it there. It's the equivalent of strength training for your visual perception, cognition, decision system. Just like pushing weights has nothing to do with any particular sport other than weightlifting, but you're building structure that is useful in all sports. Well, it turns out that sports scientists and trainers have figured out that this is one of the things that differentiates top-level athletes from others in many cases is their ability to visually perceive and make decisions and then act on them and continue to integrate that process throughout an action. So it's not designed to simulate a certain thing. It's designed basically to allow you to strengthen those muscles. And as you discovered, just that requirement to wait, I might have to talk, I might have to shoot, I might think I have to shoot, but by the time I get the gun out, I don't need to shoot anymore. I need to talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very challenging, but it's very revealing about where, at least for me, where my weaknesses were. And so that's why I appreciated it so much, brought those out instantly. But even just through the 4-hour block of time that we were in, I could see dramatic improvement in the weaknesses that I had.
Absolutely.
And one of the things also that I appreciated so much was that there was a visual indicator of when to stop shooting as well as when to start shooting, which I think is so important. That's always kind of, it seems like a discussion and maybe perhaps even a gray area, depending on who you're talking to on what that should look like. But that's really important. That's very important.
What I say is we have a visual indication of when to start, and then we should be able to take in, we need to make sure we can continue to take in visual information while delivering accurate hits.
Yeah.
And that is a point. The Air Force learned about this years ago, training jet fighter pilots. They're tested at over 180 degree peripheral vision, most of them, but you put them in a mock dogfight and they miss a second enemy aircraft entering the dogfight at 35 to 45 degrees off the primary. Well, it's not a lack of ability physically to see. It is a form of tunnel vision. It is a form of attentional narrowing. And if we've never had to align anything outside, if we've never had to be aware of anything outside our sight picture while delivering bullets, you don't know if you have that ability or not. And what I can tell you from experience, having a lot of people experience it, is most people don't. They will fail to take in information that's being projected onto the target just 18 inches away from their point of impact. And we say stop, but it may be change. It may be you need to add somebody else to the fight. It may be that there's still a threat, but you need to pause because a no-shoot, an innocent, is about to intersect either directly behind or between you and the threat. So being able to see that coming, and people, they just think they'll be good at it, and they're not. And unfortunately, we had a tragic incident in our area about 2 years ago now. 2 law enforcement officers under fire, and the bad guy's charging them, and the officer on the right is tracking the bad guy and engaging him, and he engages right across into the officer on his left and shoots his fellow officer. All this was in a vehicle. It's not like, hidden behind a bush or something. Well, there was an FDO in the passenger seat and the trainee in the driver's seat, and the FDO fatally shot the trainee as he needed to shoot this guy that was aggressing on him and putting rounds through their window. So it's not as easy as, we just shoot till he falls down and then it's gone. We need to be able to see what's happening around and take it into account and modify our behavior as we go. So that's a piece of it, the visual perception, cognition, decision piece. Another piece is movement. Movement, in my opinion, is just taught, practiced so poorly, frankly. It's just most of what the industry does with movement. I have to bite my tongue sometimes. I love to take other people's training. I love to growth needs to be continual. I'm going to be a lifelong learner, and I'm out there. I take at least 2 classes every year. I used to try for 3, but got busy. Now I try and take at least 2 classes every year and attend at least 1 conference where I could see a bunch of other instructors teach, even if I don't get to shoot all the drills. But I look at movement, and I just want to ask, what is the potential application of what you're doing? Maybe it's something and I just can't figure it out. Maybe it's, I see people like literally moving in ultra slow motion so they can shoot while moving. Why? What's the value of that? So again, if we do a needs analysis, why am I moving? There's 2 reasons to move, 3 possibly. 1, I am under fire. I am moving to make it myself harder to hit. How fast should I be moving? Moving. Right, fast. Yeah. All right. So that's movement number 1. Reason number 1. Number 2, I can't see or do what I need to see or do from where I am. Mm-hmm. In other words, I need to get a clean line. I need to manage my foreground and my background. I need to look around something. In that case, I don't need to shoot while moving. I need to move, get where I need to be, and then shoot as soon as I can. Mm. So where are the applications for moving in slow, or even, well, we're not training to move in slow motion. We're eventually get faster at it. Well, if I can hit him from where I am, why don't I just hit him?
Yeah.
Unless I need to be moving to not get shot, in which case I need to be moving at a sprint. So this is one of my, something I'll do with that is get their draw to first shot time and then set a bar timer for their draw to first shot time. See how far they can move in that amount of time, right? Sounds a lot like a Tooler drill, but just see, like I train a lot in an indoor range that's fairly narrow. It's just over 7 yards wide. Well, what I know is almost everyone can run laterally across that range in the same amount of time it takes them to draw and fire 1 shot. But when they do a drill, they want to shoot 3 or 4 times. So did they somehow get 3 times as fast at shooting? No, they got 1/3 as fast at moving. If you're going to practice this, you should move. You only have time to shoot 1 shot while you move across my indoor bay, if you're moving at the pace you can move. So when we get outside, what I'm looking at is I want to see you move 90% as far and use no more than 10% more time. I want to see 90% of your draw speed with 90% of your movement distance. That's the goal. And you're probably only going to get to shoot once, 1 shot in that drill, unless we do it with airsoft or something, so we can put some angles, some spirals on it, and some other things, which is something we need to do as well. So the point is, there's so much time we waste with shooting on the move that is, in my experience, it's teaching you to do a thing that I can't figure out the practical application of that thing ever anywhere. So why are we doing it? If it's some sport need or some other need, that's fine. Go for it, learn it, get good at it. But if you're like me, that my sole interest in any of the sports activities are to get better at defensive use of the firearm, how much time am I willing to spend on things that don't directly relate is another piece of it. So movement. Use of cover. People move to cover and then they spend 2 or 3 seconds getting organized and coming back out around cover like, oh, the gunfight just went on pause because I stepped in behind cover. That's not the way it really works. You step in behind something, the other guy may keep trying to come out and flank you. We need to learn to get in behind stuff instantly, rapidly in that same 3 to 5 second window that the fight happens in. What can we do with cover in 3 to 5 seconds? That's what we need to explore. How do we optimize use of cover in 3 to 5 seconds? So there's another aspect of aligning training with reality.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just wondering I'm just thinking about all these things that you're saying, and I'm a Handgun Fundamentals. That's one of my classes that I teach, and I do an intro to speed and accuracy, but I was just thinking, how soon and in what ways can we introduce these concepts to people? And what does that look like? Those are the questions rolling around in my head. Okay.
Visual perception. Here is how I use that. And much of this is my take on Dustin Solomon's work. Where I get it right, Dustin, I give you credit. Where I get it wrong, it's all me. So visual perception. So what if we took absolute beginning shooters, absolute beginners, where we're telling them, when to pick up the gun and when to point at the target, when to put their finger on the trigger. We're at that absolute beginner stage. Right at the point before you tell them to put their finger on the trigger, I turn a laser projection onto the target. I don't even mention it to the student. I just put it on the target. Then I do everything exactly the way I would. Right at the point where I tell them to return their finger to the home position or register position, I turn the visual indicator off and do everything else the same. But now there's this visual projection on the target that's coming and going. The next step of it is, at the point where you teach follow through, you tell them, as long as that projection of the green triangle is on the target, I want you to follow through. When the green triangle goes away, send your trigger finger home, move back to your ready position. Then we're teaching tying 2 shots together. And we go from follow through. As long as the light is on, follow through. If the light is still on, you may fire another shot. This is the next step. If the light is still on, I would like you to fire another shot and follow through as long as the light is on. Then, as long as the light is on, I would like you to continue to follow through and deliver accurate fire. Now, from the very beginning, we have built in the need to be visually aware of something that's happening outside our sight picture while we're shooting. So from the very beginning, we're now building. Dustin Solomon and many others, use a lot of analogies to like electrical circuits. If you don't have the inputs and outputs wired in, if they don't exist on your circuit board, adding them later is a real pain in the ass, right? Same thing here. We can, from the beginning, while they're doing everything else, we just ask them to be aware of, without ever asking them to be aware of, just by putting it there, we ask them to be aware of this visual stimulus. Now, when I start putting it on a target next to that one and saying, oh, by the way, if the target next to it lights up, it's now a threat too. You should shoot both of them. Oh, okay. But we've got to build the circuits from the beginning. So that's how I work that one. Ready positions, just enforce full range of motion ready positions. Enforce that any drill starting from a ready position starts from the position I would like you to be in if you do not yet have a subject to orient a gun at or toward. So in other words, a neutral ready position. Now that will then be useful for us in any type of structural, any type of movement, any type of, you don't have to be moving, you're standing still looking. You don't know if the problem is going to come up from the door to your left, the door to your right, that sort of thing. So, but we build it in from the beginning. It's not easy, but it's relatively simple if we spend some time thinking about it.
You're really making the wheels turn, John.
Yeah. Good.
Because I'm always trying to adapt and change my class in ways that are thoughtful and relevant and contextual. And I don't know why. I feel like there's more I should be doing with my newer shooters. Like, I'm just not satisfied with all of the normal things that I've been taught as an instructor to do with them. And so I'm always running these little experiments
Yeah,
on just to see what works, what doesn't.
My curriculum is constantly in flux. Not the core of it. The foundation is there.
Yeah, right.
But that is, I love to hear you say that. It tells me you're an awesome instructor because, to me, one of the joys also, if there is such thing as an average group of people, what I know is I can get the average group of 10 or 12 people significantly further now than I could 10 years ago. Why? I've learned to be more efficient. I've learned what words communicate better. I've learned not just the macro pieces of how to structure the class, but how to communicate the concepts better and more effectively.
Yeah, you've got a great voice too. Like I feel like I could listen to you on an audiobook or something.
Thanks.
I think I wonder if you should have your own show, and then also if you're a singer, I bet you're an excellent singer. You've got. I am
not. My range is narrow and
really.
Flat.
The texture of your voice is just so great. Yeah, I feel like you could do voiceovers or something. Oh, I was going to ask you because I noticed that when you were answering my questions, you answered them so thoroughly, but very concisely. And I wondered, and I'm sure this is just all of your years of experience is what this really boils down to. But surely you surely haven't always been this way, John. What would you have any advice for anyone looking to improve in that area, whether they're an instructor or a leader of some kind in their group or their church or whatever that might be? Was there anything in particular that you did, or did you just get the reps in and get better at it and be aware of what worked and what didn't?
I know what works for me. I don't know if it necessarily works for everybody. And what works for me is structure. Again, that I think I structure things in outlines, so to speak, and flowcharts in my head. So again, it goes back to that analysis, right, of what's the task and what are the possible. And then as we go through the conversation or the situation, where could this situation go? Where could this conversation go? What are the structural pieces of that? What are the important concepts there? So to me, what allows me to do it is having thought about it enough to have my internal structure in place to be able to, which for me is just what I need to understand the topic thoroughly. And it leads us back to, if I truly know it, I can teach it, right?
Yeah.
If not, I don't truly know it. I haven't done the work yet to understand the structure sufficiently.
So are you just constantly organizing things in your head all the time? Is that just how your brain works?
Yeah, if I could bring that into my office, it would work.
Could you make a visual representation?
I organize my space. I organize my
So in one area you've got it down, but in another area you still need work. That is so funny, because the last question I was going to ask you today, and we'll wrap up in here in just a minute, but for the last question, because I want you to talk about where people can find you, because I want to know where you're going to be this year. You're a master of so many things.
Thank you.
You really are. It's really amazing and admirable. And I'm just wondering, what is it that you haven't yet mastered that you're still working on?
Oh gosh, so many things. It's funny. People, I feel that I'm still working on self-discipline, on working on the things that, sometimes I feel a little like, I'll date myself again here. Was it Alice in Wonderland? I give myself I give myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it. I think is the Alice quote. I'd like to think it's not very seldom that I follow it. But to me, it is, and it's funny because I say that and people I know are like, oh, you're like one of the most self-disciplined people I know. Only because internally I'm that chaotic and lazy that I have to be, or I accomplish nothing. I have to be self-disciplined. So it's a constant struggle to apply self-discipline to all the areas that it needs to be applied to.
No kidding. I would have never guessed that.
Yep.
Did you refer to internal chaos, John, just now?
Sure.
Internal chaos? Wow. You must not let it out very often, because I don't see it.
Yeah.
Wow. So you are human, just like the rest of us.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I certainly enjoyed our conversation. Where can people go to find you, to train with you, to learn from you?
Yeah. So I own a gun store and indoor range south of Everett, Washington, and we do a significant amount of training that are absolute beginners. If you're in our area and you have students that really want to work on foundational skills, we've got an awesome program. I've just started just last year and this year going back on the road a little bit, half dozen or so classes a year. Coming up toward the end of July, we're going to be in upstate New York, Canandaigua, New York. Toward the end of August, we're going to be in the Ogden, Utah area, Tennessee in September, Ohio in October, Alabama in November. The way to find all that is westcoastarmorynorth.com. There is a West Coast Armory. That won't do it. That's not us. That's somebody else. westcoastarmorynorth.com. Look at the training page. I'm going to be also with Lee Weems, Eric Gilhouse, and John Hearn doing the Cognitive Conclave in October in, where is that? Alabama somewhere.
Alabama. Okay.
And so that'll be great fun. Those guys, I think this is their second or third one, and they were kind enough to invite me to join in, and really looking forward to that. That'll be a great both learning and teaching experience, I'm sure. So yeah, westcoastarmorynorth.com training page, very top of the page. It's labeled out of state, and that is my out of state schedule. The only class I'm doing on that, other than the Cognitive Conclave, is what I call Applied Defensive Handgun Skills. You got a taste of that, a 4-hour taste of that at the Girl in the Gun Conference. It's a 2-day class where we explore as much of this material as we can in 2 days. The vast majority of it is the visual perception, cognition, decision piece. I don't think we got to it last year at Girl in a Gun. This year we did a piece that I really love. I call it flash assessment to purposeful movement. So basically, you have a 3-dimensional array of targets that are programmed to display in certain patterns. And we give you some general tactical guidelines, like I never want to look at the wrong end of a gun. I definitely don't want to look at the wrong end of 2 guns. So if there are 2 people pointing guns at me, I should move to stack them up so there's only one. I shouldn't fire a shot within 1 step or arm's reach of an innocent. So if I give you a shoot target that you would have to shoot right past an innocent from where you are, you're going to have to move before you can engage that. So that I think is super, super valuable as well.
That sounds like fun.
That people don't get to do very often, where I mean, you can see what's there, you know what the possibilities are, but it's still amazing how people sometimes have, a 2 to 4 second lag from the stimulus being presented while they process it before they begin moving and doing something that makes sense.
Wow, that sounds like fun. So the
part of that.
The class you're doing in Utah, which one is that?
Applied defensive handgun skills.
Oh, the 2-day?
Yep.
Oh, that's
you should come. You should come check it out. It's
all it takes is money, John. It's all
I know, and time.
Well, that sounds like fun. I really, really want to train with you again. And I'm just really glad that A Girl in a Gun brought you to the conference. Otherwise, I don't know that I would have ever learned about you. I think you're kind of making the rounds now. You're getting more and more popular as time goes on. It seems like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, starting to kind of put it out there a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's really needed. I just want to say thank you for what you do, because your experience paired with your excellent communication and your teaching style is exactly what I believe the industry needs. And what you're teaching is so valuable, and very few, I believe, are doing much of it. I just love seeing it.
I do as well. I chose this material specifically to bring out what I felt wasn't getting covered very well. And that's not a hit on anybody. Everybody, as you know, with curriculum design, it isn't what you put in, it's what you leave out. There's only a certain amount of time. You can only put in so much. So what I did is I looked at it and said, what's being served well? Well, I don't need to do that. That's being served well. There's lots of people that are doing that really, really well. What isn't being served as well or as often as thoroughly? Well, let me do that. Let me get out there and expose people to some things they may not have seen before.
Is your wonderful wife going to be traveling with you as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, I love her.
She is my number one aid assistant, keeps me straight, and co-instructor.
Yeah, she's special. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today, John. You've been a pleasure to have on.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.